my guest today is Kayla Oughton, an ADHD informed coach who went from under 1,000 followers to nearly 20,000 followers in what kind of felt like overnight. She runs Dopamine and Co. She was diagnosed with ADHD at 35, and she has a whole lot of refreshingly honest things to say about showing up online when your brain doesn't work the way the advice says it should. Kayla, welcome to the Social Smarties Show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So we'll dive straight in. Now, over the years, I know that you've had quite a few different versions of yourself on social media. So I'd love you to take us back to the beginning. Where did you start out with using social media?
Oh, good question. So personally, I was straight on the Facebook wagon as soon as I could. I was classic millennial. There is a horrendous amount of nights out photos of me online, um, which is mortifying, and I probably need to do a bit of a cleanse. And then it was, jumping on board with, I guess, Instagram and kept it a lot more private, I guess, by that point.
Cool.
The partying days have toned it down, but there was still around 2022, I started posting on a new account that I'd made called One Tradie at a Time, which was intended to help support tradies and people in construction around well-being and like mental health and all that sort of side of things. And so I grew that page reasonably quickly to about kind of 900, 1,000-ish. But I realized how much I was holding back even then because it took, and I kind of threw it all away and was like, don't want to do this anymore because I left construction. And there was a big part of that identity of like, well, how can I be online talking about well-being in an industry that didn't treat me very well? So it was a lot of like hesitation, I think, on that. And so that account actually still exists and it still sits there. But it was about a couple of years later in 2024, I started posting on a new account where I was like, right, I'm going to talk about ADHD and my journey and how it's all kind of been panning out. It was about 5 months post me getting a diagnosis. And, I'd gone down the rabbit hole. I was like, far out, more people need to know about this, from a New Zealand point of view as well, because a lot of the content I was finding was UK based predominantly or American. And I wasn't seeing any Kiwis talking about it. And I think it was just that deep drive to like have that justice sensitivity flag waving, and like I wanted to help people. I wanted to highlight a really big problem. um, but I was hiding. I was heavily censoring myself. There was that fear of like, oh, it needs to be perfect. I need to find the perfect Canva template. So I'd go into Canva and I'd get so overwhelmed.
Yep.
So I wouldn't post anything. And then I was too afraid of saying something that would be, someone would, oh, that's wrong. So I grew to about 200 followers and I literally sat on around about 230 to 250 for about a year. Like I'd get two new followers, then two would unfollow, and it was just this like, ah. Um, and it was about a year later, so kind of around maybe June last year.
Yep.
I think I'd managed to get to about 400 by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And something I clocked around then was I'm making this so hard for myself because every time I tried to open Canva or, like I just got so in my own head around what it needed to look like. So I started to just use the text on screen feature.
Cool.
So straight away, massive barrier gone.
Yeah.
And it catered for if I was out and about, just, this idea comes into my head, I'm going to post about it. So it just freed up a whole lot more cognitive load around the posting and like, oh, I've got a quick idea. Boom, 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 here's a few photos, chuck a bit of text on it, boom. And so I started growing. I started seeing, I started hitting my first months of like 100 followers. Like, oh, yeah, like this is exciting.
Yeah.
But there was still, I noticed I was still really censoring myself because in the background yes, I'd had my ADHD diagnosis, but I had started to suspect autism too. And so a lot of what I was putting out there was that little voice in my head of being like, well, hang on a minute, is this AuDHD? If I post about this on ADHD, like, where's the line? And what if I don't know that line? Because I don't know what it's like to just be ADHD. And like when I had that realization, it was maybe like one or two pieces of content, I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. ADHD,
Wow.
um, because it was so much more authentic and it just flowed out of me because I didn't have
Yeah.
to second guess myself. And yeah, like I'd done so many courses and online things, and I'd actually signed up to do a diploma in digital marketing last year to learn how to do social media better. Um, and every piece of advice out there is niche down. And I think I was too worried to do that of like, oh, what if I niche down and the ADHD is feel a bit left out, or the people I've been building as ADHD coach Kayla. And all it did was it just opened the doors to attract the right people. And I had a post go somewhat viral well, for me, definitely in December. And it was literally the day before I was talking to a friend being like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this for. Like, it's just, it's enjoyable, but I'm just not seeing traction. And I put out that one more reel, and that reel, I think to date has almost got me 5,000 followers alone.
Wow.
Um,
That's
and it just went,
amazing.
and it was talking about pathological demand avoidance, which is very much an ADHD autistic thing. So yeah, it was quite, and then since then it's been fun. It's been easy. I think it unlocked, I've gone viral a couple of times now. Like I went viral on TikTok once by accident. Don't recommend that.
No, tell me why. Why don't you recommend that? What happened?
So I think the reason I went viral on TikTok, and this was, I think it was about August last year. So it was when I was starting to grow, and I only had like 90 followers on TikTok. So I was like, meh. Um, and I did a post about rejection sensitivity because it's a major part of ADHD. It was crippling for most of my life. It was a big part of the reason why I wasn't showing up, because of that fear of rejection, that fear of criticism, needing to be perfect. What if I fail? And I did a little post, and it was just me in the car, completely off the cuff, no script, no nothing. I just went, oh, this might be helpful for some people. And I took a little bit long to get to the point,
Yeah.
which everybody very kindly told me so in the comments, um, which boosted the engagement.
Of course.
So there was a real you know, catch 22 with it all. It was like my phone was literally going hot with it was like
Wow.
hot from notifications. Um, I mean, I think it's still maybe only around like 300,000 or 400,000 views, but
That's
thousands
still
of
big.
comments. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was my first foray of like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
um, and that was like, yeah, it was interesting because a lot of people were saying some really mean things in the comments, which was, in my eyes, was the worst thing that could happen if you're posting online, is that someone criticizes you.
Yes.
So it was like real baptism by fire stuff, I think, of being like, oh well, like now I see it as, well, the worst's happened.
Yeah.
Like my biggest
You've
fear
been
of
there.
posting
Yeah.
online, it happened in the really early days. And like my account on TikTok went from like, I think that post alone, from like 90 followers to almost 2,000.
Wow.
So and like that's just been ticking over now. But I actually find it's a very different landscape to Instagram. A lot more engagement, a lot more community in the comments.
With that TikTok post, so you obviously had the people who wanted to tell you, that you didn't get to the point quick enough. But thinking about the engagement that you had on that post, was it almost like a 50-50 split between positive or negative, or was it largely, that negative sort of stuff?
No, it was probably 90% positive, 10% negative, but my brain went to the negative, because the negative comments that were there got piled on. So TikTok was
Wow.
pushing them to the top. So every time you open that video, there was, 500 people, probably more now, had liked the comment of like, don't you know your target audience? Get to the point, like those kind of things. And it was really, and it was quite confronting. But then it just taught me that you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
And some people, and when you're talking about topics like I do, they're very real and they're very confronting, and people don't like to face them, and they let you
Yeah.
know.
And so thinking about when you went viral on Instagram, was it a similar thing? Was there any negativity or was it a lot more positive?
Nah, it was way more positive, and it was there was the odd comment for sure, and I still get the odd comment of people just you know having their opinion, but it overwhelmingly across all of my content, and like you would have seen it, the overarching theme is, oh my God, you've just explained my life.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of comments I get, and it garners conversation within the comments of people tagging their friends, and then the friend comes, like it's a really lovely, and I try and reply to as many as I can, just to kind of keep that engagement and keep that, when people ask questions, I try and answer as much, and I probably do fight back sometimes with some of the. I'm learning not to, but sometimes you're like, you know,
And why do you think you shouldn't bite back? Why do you think that you should learn not to, in your words?
it's just protecting your own energy. Because, like you say, you can have all the positive comments, but, your brains are wired to find the negative, right?
Totally.
So it's about whether you give them space or not. And for the most part, like as I say, I'm getting pretty good at just being like, oh, here we go, another troll. But if
Yeah.
I'm having a really bad day, it's
Mm.
awful. It's really
Yeah.
awful. And, at the end of the day, I'm still human. I'm still someone navigating life in this brain. I still have my challenges. So it's just, yeah, sometimes you're like, why can't people just be nice? And like, overwhelmingly they are. But yeah. And it's quite nice though, because I've got to the point now that by the time I see one of those kind of comments, somebody else has normally already got to them. So that's quite cool.
Right. And I think that really just is a testament to the community that you're building, right? That they'll go into bat for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
massively. And that's really nice. And I always make sure to like thank that person or message them to say, hey, thank you. Like really appreciate that, So
So, thinking about what you've shared around your previous sort of iteration of your social media and then what you're currently doing on social media, it seems like what you're really good at is building a community and you're attracting people and you can make people feel seen. So, how does that translate into marketing your business? Like, how does that sort of fit together?
oh, good question. It's something I'm working on.
Yeah,
Um, Definitely learning the difference between growth content versus like converting, and how they fit in the funnel,
cool.
because I'm really good at the growth content. I can it's actually become a bit of a game. I'll be like, oh, my followers have slowed down, it's chucking out the carousel, like because I know they perform. So there's that side of things, but as well it's just you need the data, right? You need the iterations and the practice. So tweaking as I go of like, okay, this actually worked really well for someone saw that reel and booked a call.
Cool.
Let's do more, that, and just trying to really get quite nerdy on the data, because that's what's going to tell you, and not to get too attached to like, I learned to let go of this a really long time ago, but like individual metrics, like um only that reel only got 500 views or something. It's like, oh well, if
Yeah,
the right person was watching that, that's good.
yeah,
Um, and like I say, like going viral doesn't mean good things. But going viral can mean you're attracting completely the wrong people. Um,
yeah. True.
so it's definitely more about that, like refining the message on, okay, what type of people do I actually really enjoy working with? How do I start speaking to them? And for me, um, that was a big part of why I did the reel back in, I think it was December or November, about pathological demand avoidance, because a lot of the clients that I was working with were AuDHD as well, or autistic. Um, a lot of them were in very high performing roles or careers, like going through burnout, things like that. So it's like, actually, I really enjoy working with those people. Like, let's start talking to more of those people. So it's been building slowly. It's been each month I'm getting just a little bit more increment on each income, which has been good. Um, and yeah, just kind of transitioning into like, what does the next little stage look like? So yeah, it's been good.
I can imagine the listeners out there are thinking like, yes, she's cracked the code on the growth content. So what is your biggest tip? If someone's out there thinking, right, I want to grow my accounts, and it sounds like you know what you're doing, what's one tip that you could share with the listeners?
It sounds so cliche, but be yourself. Like people are so over the polished, the AI slop. Like people are tired of it. There's real fatigue with the perfect, it's really shifting to be more just the human behind whatever it is. Um, leading into more like founder content as well of like what, if you're running a business in the business social media, talk about running a business, talk about that sort of stuff. Like that's what people want to learn about. And, that content goes very well. And I think the way forward for anybody, really, anybody who's doing any kind of content is to really lean into personal brand. Um, you know, build your personal brand, be known as a thought leader in your, that term is to get, not a cringe or whatever, but that's true because that's how you're going to get the opportunities and how you're going to convert to clients and sales and things like that. And it takes practice, like being open, being vulnerable. It took me a long time to get like talking to camera. I would never do that. I would never. The thought of it used to just, I was like, no way. And now I'm chatty Cathy.
And what do you think helped that the most? Like, what was that shift to allow you to speak to camera?
It's actually two things I did, two very clear things that I did to practice that. One was sending voice notes. So I started sending voice notes to friends. So rather than like long messages or phone calls, I would just record a voice note and then I would listen back to that voice note to be like, oh, and I still do it to this day. Every voice note I send to someone, I will listen back to it to think, did I get
Wow.
my point across? How did I speak? Was
Mhm.
I all over the show? Did I articulate what I was trying to, did I get my point across basically? Um,
Yeah.
and that was massive because that, as soon as you put the camera up, you tend to freeze. You're like, okay, I'm going to, or you put on like your phone voice or your
Yeah.
hello, like, and you're like, I don't speak like that. Like, what is this? So getting that um, casual tone of just a voice note to a friend or like I'm FaceTiming someone. And I got into that practice of doing that so that when I started actually articulating, oh, I've got this idea to do a reel, it came a lot more naturally. And then the other thing was I used TikTok. So
Oh,
I didn't like Instagram. I kind of had a lot of people who knew me that were following me. And I was just like, the cringe factor was too high. I was like, I can't talk like shame. Um, but no one knew me on TikTok. I did, and I to this day I still don't follow anybody I know on TikTok. It's just kind of worked out the way because, but it felt so much more anonymous because TikTok is so much more raw and unpolished anyway as a platform. People love a yap, like the yap videos go well.
yeah.
So just leaning into that style of content really helped me push past oh, this needs to be perfect. And then the other part to that was that I find the video editing on TikTok so much easier.
Yeah.
um, so again, it was about reducing that barrier of like, okay, yes, you can do it on Instagram, you can do cut and all those other things, but just for
Mm.
me, I found the native video editing in TikTok far easier. So it became an easier, faster thing to do. So just yeah, use it, and then I just take most of my majority of my Instagram reels,
Mhm.
they're filmed on TikTok.
Cool. Easy.
Mm. Yeah.
Love it.
Then I'm just to the other one. And they perform better on Instagram anyway, so that's bizarre. I don't really know.
Yeah. So we've
Yeah.
talked about Instagram, we've talked about TikTok, and I know that you've recently launched a YouTube channel as well. How do you do it all? How do you not burn out with all these different platforms?
There's also LinkedIn.
Oh, LinkedIn. What's that one? Yep.
Um, I think it became so LinkedIn was probably something I started doing, maybe 2019-ish, very passively. Like I was a lurker, not a poster, for many years. And then I joined a challenge about May last year, and I'd post maybe once a month or something on LinkedIn. Um, and I joined a challenge on LinkedIn where it was post every single day for 90 days. But
Wow.
they made it a challenge, so like literally every Monday there was Stanley Henry from the Attention Seeker, the massive organic digital marketing content creation agency. Um, they ran it, so they literally had a spreadsheet and everything. So like it was a challenge, it was fun, and it was you like the only rule was that you had to post every single day. So that and for me as well, like you talk about the different audiences, right? Like Instagram was, oh no, people know me on there, like TikTok, really anonymous. LinkedIn was a big hurdle I had to work through because up till that point, a lot of my connections were construction based.
Mm.
And the thought like, of any of them seeing me on the street, let alone seeing what I was thinking, was really
Wow.
hard. So I actually did a bit of a cull before I started posting. Just as like, actually, I don't want you on my feed anymore, and just work through. And then I actually find LinkedIn, I probably enjoy LinkedIn the most, actually, out of all the platforms.
Wow. Yep.
I get the most connections out of it. Like from a social point of view, I think it's actually been more beneficial for me. And there's a lot of business owners and things on there. And I learn a lot from LinkedIn. So yeah, that's probably, I think, for the burnout part of things, because I'm not really on TikTok. I'll be honest, I don't use it. I do the occasional scroll. I use it to film reels, which I then just, they save to my camera roll, and then I post to Instagram. Instagram I spend an unhealthy amount of time on. It's a work on for me, because I like scrolling Instagram. But I don't really have a system either. It's just whatever pops into mind. I try and take away that, because when I start thinking batching content or needs to be in a system, I get overwhelmed and I won't do it. So I just go with whatever kind of feels good. I have like a rough direction of, I know what I want to talk about. And I think Instagram it's AuDHD content, like a little bit
Yep.
of me, a little bit of life, but it's that focus. TikTok's a little bit more, a blend. So there's car thoughts, things like that, like bit more off the cuff, like if I'm feeling in the mood. And then LinkedIn I use as how do I use it? I don't even know. Like I pull from everything on there. So I'll pull from my construction time, my time working with Mates for Life and suicide prevention. I quite often talk about that over there.
Wow.
Workplace, psychosocial safety, like that's a bit more Kayla rather than like the ADHD coach. And then YouTube
Yeah. Talk
is
about
the new
that.
one. I just saw an opportunity. I really enjoy doing long form content. I find I really struggle to like fit things into the reels. And thought, why not give it a go? And it's going all right so far. I've only had a few long form content, but I just post again. I'm just using the same content of the reels and TikToks, posting them to shorts.
Cool.
And just through that, I've grown, I think, 240 something subscribers,
Wow.
purely from just repurposing stuff there. But over there, I'm talking more specifically about being an AuDHD business owner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I tried
Cool.
Substack for a bit too, but got bored of that.
Well, I'm not really familiar with Substack. What's it all about?
It's blogs, writing.
Yeah. So you
Um,
build an audience in the same way that you would on a social media channel, so they follow you to get your updates?
yeah, and it is yeah, it is. It's very but you do need to cross post to like get people there. So I
Yeah.
think that's where I kind of fell a bit short. And like I really enjoy writing. And it's definitely something I want to kind of get a bit more into eventually. But yeah, it's just for that age and like the phase where I was at, I was like, it's too hard
Yeah.
because you had
Yeah.
to constantly share and repost and yeah.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but I just see some, yeah, there's some pretty successful people in Substack. So who
Yeah.
knows?
Awesome. So, speaking about your ADHD, so you were diagnosed at 35 and you also identify as autistic. So, how does that come into play with the social media? Like, what are the benefits? What are the challenges? What does that look like?
Um, I'll start with challenges first. So I touched it before, but rejection sensitive dysphoria. So that
Mhm.
fear of criticism, of failure, of rejection is huge. And when you talk about, putting yourself out there, like you're exposing yourself, like you're quite vulnerable. So I had to do a lot of work around that. I mean, that was a really big part of just my journey with diagnosis anyway. Um, so that's probably the biggest one. And then the other one is the justice sensitivity. Like I say, like I can't leave a snarky comment. um, I there's that innate sense to like help people and to which can put you in the firing line sometimes, and probably set you off in a bad way some days. So that can be quite hard to kind of just rein in a bit. And then consistency, they say that one of the best things you can do for anything, right? Anything to be successful is that you need to have consistency. I
Yeah.
am consistently inconsistent. Um, and that works for me. So that's, I think, letting go of that perfectionism of like, oh, I need to have a structure and I need to have a plan.
Mm.
That was too overwhelming because then I would fall off the plan and then I'd beat myself up about it. I'd be really mean to
Yeah.
myself. So just learning that, like, I think 2 days ago, I was like, did I just post 4 times in a day? Yes. Like, am I probably not going to post another 3 days? Yeah, probably. Like, that's okay. Like I just go with my energy. Um, so that was a really challenging one to get my head around because a lot of the traditional advice out there is, you need to have a plan and needs to be your content pillars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was really tricky. And then just, I think, overwhelm with tech and admin. The admin of it
Mm.
all is, ugh. And you're like, I know what the end goal is, but I don't know what step one is. So, like,
Yeah.
sometimes even, oh, I've got an idea for something, but I know it's going to take a bit of research and then I'm going to absorb that research and, like it, so you just don't do it. So there's been, yeah, a lot of those kind of things. But then on the flip side, like I'm really creative and it just
Yeah.
comes really easily. And like the energy, when it's good, it's just, I'm unstoppable. Like I can do so much in a very quick time if the mood's right. Like
Yeah.
if the environment's good, like my hyper focus will kick in and, you know, I will create an entire course in an afternoon, which is what I did the other week. Like um I can hyperfixate and get all of these things set up, whether it's the mini chat, you know, then your mail, your email thing, like all the bits. Because yes, you might have a piece of content, but that's not the end goal, right? Like um,
Yeah.
a lot of the time you have to then attach it to the system.
Yeah.
So just waiting for those big bursts of energy and then just smash through it all. And I think like, the pattern recognition as well has been very useful, like very useful. So, spotting, okay, what's doing well with other content creators, what things am I seeing in my feed, what can I, you know, take inspiration from, what's trending, like those kind of things that we're quite good at picking up on. Um,
Mm.
and then that connection piece as well, right? Like I can genuinely speak to the experience of being ADHD, and like that's what people want. They want someone who's going to be real about it, because especially in this topic, right? Like most people have spent most of their life being told that they're the problem.
Yeah.
So having that ability to kind of weave a bit of a yarn and pop a solution at the end, it's quite nice.
Cool. Love that.
Mm.
Awesome. Okay, so last question. What would you tell a business owner who keeps stopping and starting with social media and feels like they maybe have missed their chance? Would you have any advice?
That's there.
Yeah, just get on it.
Yep. Yeah, you haven't missed it. You absolutely have not missed it. And I think, make it as easy as possible as you can. Like reduce the friction, set a timer, just say, right, in 5 minutes, I'm going to post something. Just take away any, oh, but it needs to be this, it needs to be that. Like, no, if you've got something to say, just say it, put it out there. And then keep doing that. So I think that's what happens is people maybe put one thing out, oh, no one saw it, it's like, yeah, because you have one post. Like, um, it took me, I don't even know, I think it was like 200 and, I think it was like 250 posts before I started to see traction. Um, and for me, that was a challenge, like that consistency of just like, oh, I feel like I'm just yelling out to the void, like that was tough, but like it wasn't like, people say, oh my gosh, your page is going so quickly. I'm like, yeah, since December.
Yeah.
but but the 18 months before that, oh my golly, like that was tough going.
Yeah.
But it was something I was interested in,
Mm.
which made all the difference. It was something I was passionate about. It was something that was new and novel because I was learning about social media and how to create good content. So it made it fun, like, and then when you start seeing the numbers come in, like, ooh, it's a challenge, like,
Yeah.
okay, that posted X amount of views or whatever. Can I beat it? Like, so I just gamified the hell out of it. And like, and
Awesome.
it's just, now it's just like, it's fun, it's dopamine hits. And now it's learning, okay, how do I leverage that to build my personal brand? And like,
Yes.
that's the way forward, right? With AI and everything that's happening. And I think that's where people need to jump on that, just start talking, start, being unapologetically them and be authentic and see what happens. Because you never know. You just never know.
Yeah. Awesome. So you mentioned a course that you've built. Tell us where we can find you. What have you got out there? How can people come and find you on these social media platforms?
Yeah, it's the best place to get me is at ADHD Coach Kayla. That
Mhm.
is on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, I think Substack. I can't remember. Um, but that's my name. That's where I am. And I do, so my business is called Dopamine and Co. Which I'm actually going to be starting to do a bit more around cognitive design. Like how do you
Oh,
cognitive friendly design, I should say, sorry. So how do you design a life that's going to be cognitively friendly? How can you create workspaces that cater for different brain types, including the psychosocial safety, well-being, and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of
amazing.
the intention for that. And how do you leverage things like AI, um, and just my knowledge with neurodivergence, plus my construction background of project management and implementation, health and safety, and all that sort of side of things. So I realized as though, like I have this career that I essentially just went,
Yeah.
and it's like actually there's a lot of transferable skills in that, and it's stuff I really enjoy doing. So that's kind of the intention there. But I've got, I do one-to-one coaching. You don't need to have a diagnosis to work with me. I think that's a common thought. I work with anyone. We've all got brains, so what works for ADHD and autistic brains works for everybody. Um, and yeah, trying to do I've got some courses and resources, but it's all just through on my ADHD coach page.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. There are some serious gold nuggets in there. I think there'll be lots of listeners that are keen to come and check you out. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.